Hello, my name is Phil Easter, historian and writer from Baltimore, Maryland, also known as the Amazing Memory Man. We are recording tonight on Sunday, October 1st, 2023. This is story number 37 on my YouTube channel, which is Phil Easter, the Amazing Memory Man. First, I would like to mention that today, October 1st, is the 99th birthday of former President Jimmy Carter. So we wish former President Carter and his wife Rosalind a very happy birthday to the former president in Plains, Georgia. Earlier this week, on September 26, 2023, my favorite baseball player of all time, Brooks Robinson, died at age 86. He was the star third baseman of the Baltimore Orioles between 1955 and 1977. His proper name, Brooks Calvert Robinson, and he was born May 18, 1937, in Little Rock, Arkansas. He played a number of sports when he was young: football, basketball, and ran track in his high school, besides playing baseball. He signed with the Orioles in 1955 and first went to York, Pennsylvania, where there was a minor league baseball team, at that time called the York White Roses. Now it's a different name of the team, it's the York Revolution, but at that time it was the White Roses. They were affiliated with the Baltimore Orioles major league team. He played third base for all those years, 1955 to 77 for the Orioles, 23 years. I recently read that no other player in baseball history played for the same team for 23 seasons. Very few players ever played more seasons than Brooks Robinson. A few did, played 24, 25, or 26 seasons, but with two or more teams. So Brooks was with the Orioles for 23 seasons. In 1964, he won the American League Most Valuable Player Award, not only playing third base so well as he always did on defense, but he drove in 118 runs batted in. And though the New York Yankees won the American League pennant with such famous players as Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris, Brooks Robinson still drove in more runs than anyone, and he won the Most Valuable Player Award. 2 years later, in 1966, he was voted the Most Valuable Player of the Major League All-Star Game, which was held in St. Louis, the hottest All-Star game ever played on that July afternoon. Various temperatures ranged from about 104 to 106 on the field. He hit a triple and scored the only run for the American League. He was named Most Valuable Player of that game. That year was a wonderful, magical year in Oriole history. When they came to Baltimore from St. Louis in 1954, the formerly St. Louis Browns, then became the Baltimore Orioles, they had never yet won an American League pennant in Baltimore. But in 1966, with the addition of Frank Robinson, who came over from the Cincinnati Reds in a trade for several players, the two Robinsons led the way. Frank won the Triple Crown that year. And Brooks and Frank Robinson, as you can see on this magazine, the Sports Illustrated magazine, they call the Baltimore's heroes. And the Orioles won the American League pennant and faced the Dodgers in the World Series. The Los Angeles Dodgers were heavily favored to win that series. They were defending champions from the year before, 1965. But the Orioles not only won, but won 4 straight games. They beat the Dodgers in Los Angeles on October 5th by a score of 5-2. The next day, October 6th, 6-0. Then Friday, October 7th was a travel day. And on Saturday and Sunday, October 8th and 9th, the Orioles won those games 1-0, 2 days in a row, on home runs by Paul Blair and Frank Robinson. The 4-game sweep of the Dodgers was just incredible. It shocked everybody in the baseball world. A very happy time here in Baltimore. I remember my mom tried to get tickets for us. In those days, it's long before the internet. You had to stand in line sometime, and went down to that main post office in Baltimore, and there were so many people trying to get tickets to be postmarked at a certain date, and it was so hard, most people were shut out. That first World Series in Baltimore, so many people wanted to see. I have a friend, longtime friend, Jack Bonney, who I met him in 1978, some years later, but he told me the story of 1966 when he was 20 years old, how he was trying to get tickets the same way my mom and I tried, but couldn't get them. Now, Jack's father was a clothing salesman. He was based in Baltimore, but he would travel down south sometime to different states selling men's clothing. So he happened to be in the state of Arkansas at that time, ironically where Brooks Robinson was born. But sometime before that, he sold Brooks Robinson a suit or at least some type of men's clothing. And he said, "I'll see what I can do, Jack." He phoned the Orioles, and 2 days after he called, my friend Jack received in the mail from the Baltimore Orioles tickets to games 3, 4, and 5, the 3 that were scheduled to be played in Baltimore. So how wonderful. And Jack tells me that the envelope upper left-hand corner said B. Robinson, Baltimore Orioles. Brooks sent him tickets for 2 tickets for each of those games. Of course, Jack enjoyed going to games 3 and 4, and there was no game 5 because the Orioles won 4 straight. But that was so nice of Brooks Robinson to do that. I met Brooks Robinson the next year in 1967 when I was about 14 years old at a clothing store downtown Baltimore called Hamburgers. Yes, a clothing store, not a restaurant, despite the name. And he autographed his book for me. I remember it said, "To Phil, best of luck in school and in sports, Brooks Robinson." I was so happy to receive the autograph of my favorite baseball player ever. Brooks Robinson was a great friend of the Baltimore community in so many ways, and so many people loved him. He was a very approachable, friendly person, often gave autographs for free, unlike players nowadays who charge in so many cases. Well, there was another World Series that was very memorable, and that was 1970. The second time the Orioles would win a World Series, and Brooks Robinson was the big star of that series. As usual, he played an excellent third base, but his batting had a batting average of .429 in that series. I think he hit 2 home runs and had many other hits, a .429 batting average. And in one of his defensive plays against the great Cincinnati Reds catcher Johnny Bench, Bench later said, "I can't believe a human can do these things that Brooks Robinson did. Such great plays at third base and then throwing over to first base too." He was the most valuable player of that series of 1970, and the most exciting and satisfying baseball game I ever saw in person was the 5th and final game. They beat the Cincinnati Reds 9-3 that day, winning the series 4-1. I was so happy to see my favorite team win the series in person. As I said before, we couldn't get tickets to 1966. We watched that on TV, but I was able to get to that final game in 1970, coming 2 days before my 18th birthday on October 17th. A very nice early birthday present. Brooks Robinson played until 1977, and I remember going to the game in September that year. September 18th, 1977 was called Brooks Robinson Day, and that was the last year he played. In 1983, he was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. And you can see his speech, one of the most moving speeches of any player elected to the Hall of Fame. There are places on the internet you can find that speech. And Brooks Robinson, one of the most loved figures in sports, and certainly here in Baltimore. We remember Brooks Robinson. Thank you, Brooks, for all you did for Oriole fans and for the city of Baltimore and the game of baseball. God bless Brooks Robinson. This is Phil Easter, the Amazing Memory Man. We'll see you next time for another story on another subject. Thank you and good night.